Good morning. Wife of seriously injured worker Lauren Forbes. As you're getting to know me, I am Christina Forbes. Today, what I thought I'd talk about is the media and why they don't really like dealing with workers' compensation, or some thoughts and things that we've learned along the way while trying to get media attention for our situation. And I'm sure other injured workers out there, I'm sure you have your own stories of trying to get media attention for, the injustices that workers' compensation, or in our case WorkSafeBC, does against injured workers. Now, we'll take John's situation as an example, where, even plastering all of that stuff on the outside of his house, losing his home, sleeping in his truck. Where are the politicians? Where's our government? Where's John's human rights? Being injured and falling 28 feet sure the fuck wasn't his fault. Why does he have to fight for it? But yet, still, shh, all quiet, little rabbits. Nobody say anything at all. Now we'll get into the media. Lauren and I have tried on numerous situations, everything from the Aid Channel to the North Island Gazette here, to get some attention to the situations that injured workers deal with. And after when we had a lawyer back about a year and a half ago, we tried with the Aid Channel. The editor of the Aid Channel actually was in high school with our lawyer and still wouldn't touch the story. Still wouldn't touch it. Way too much research to do. And, they've got to, reporters and people and the media have to make sure that all of their information is correct and it comes from a reliable source. So, which brings us to our meeting that we had with the North Island Gazette, and the nice lady that works there, and even after running our information with their company lawyer, and they have to, reporters and stuff, when taking on these type of injured worker stories when dealing with workers' compensation, have to run that information with their media lawyer. So on whether or not they can actually run the story, or if it would put them in any sort of jeopardy of actually getting sued by the workers' compensation system, in our case WorkSafeBC. So I guess after she took it to the lawyer, the company lawyers just said, no, we're not. And not only that, but WorkSafeBC more than likely wouldn't comment on the situation, which brings me to my next point, is that editors and writers and reporters and stuff like that can't print or can't send information off to print without having the other side of the story, without workers' compensation, or in our case WorkSafeBC, have a comment of their own, so they've got to be able to say their side of the story. There's actually no such thing as free press here in Canada. We don't have that like they do in the States with such things like the National Enquirer and so on and so forth. We don't, our reporters here don't have that luxury of printing names and just one side of the story and going with the story like they do in the States or other countries for that matter. So it's actually quite hard for injured workers and reporters to get out there and get those injured workers' stories printed. Workers' compensation is a huge corporation, right? So, there has been reporters that have, broken open some stories. We'll take, I don't exactly remember the gentleman's name, but we'll take the Alberta situation and so on and so forth with those few little items that I've read there. Second of all, I think reporters have actually just overall lost what it is that a reporter does. What is it exactly? Has it gone from reporters actually getting in there, finding the information, and breaking stories open? It's not like that anymore. Reporters want shit that's fucking easy, that's, got sex appeal, some gore, stuff that's pretty much easy for them to slap up on the fucking paper, and the stuff that sells. Which will bring me to my point of, my sister-in-law's husband was murdered coming home from work His name is Douglas Gormley. I'm sure many of you have heard of the story. It was across Canada. When Doug was murdered, Workers' Compensation, of course WorkSafeBC, stepped right up to the plate, positive, right? But not without covering themselves. When a worker goes to work and comes back from work, they are covered on their way to work and they are covered on their way home, as long as you don't stop anywhere along the way. No stopping for bread and milk, no stopping to fill up the car, nothing like that. Workers' Compensation, they made sure that Doug didn't stop anywhere along the way coming home from work. No store or anything like that. My sister-in-law and her family were, taken care of very nicely by Workers' Compensation, of course. Anything that makes them look that little bit better. And of course Workers' Compensation just jumped right all over that. Here you are, there you go, blah, 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 blah. And so, she's given a decent pension, and her sons are taken care of, and they're given a decent pension as well. Sad, though, for a life lost. We sure miss Doug. But, which brings me to reporters. Fucking reporters were all over that fucking story like a fat kid on a fucking Smartie. All over it. Why? Because it was easy to write. The story pretty much wrote itself. There was blood. That always sells itself. There was a family that was going through a hard time at that time. That pretty much sells itself. And they were like vultures with Sandy. It was awful. Awful, awful, awful experience. Well, dealing with the loss of her husband and her baby's father and trying to wade through court, the media were like fucking leeches. Leeches. Like, whether it be the phone, the fucking courthouse, so on and so forth. Ridiculous. Because that's what sold papers. But yeah, we've got poor guys like John, we'll take Lauren and myself, the thousands of other injured workers that are on the Canadian Injured Workers Society and the Canadian Injured Workers community, where their stories aren't getting told. And why? Because they don't lack the blood and the guts and the gore, and it's not easy to write, and yada, yada, yada. Which brings me to another point. That injured worker commits suicide, reporters are all fucking over it. An injured worker puts himself up in a tree for 30 fucking days, they're all over it. It's easy to write, not much investigation needed. They're all over it, WorkSafeBC does something good for the community. Of course WorkSafeBC is going to comment on it, so they're going to print it. But they don't ever comment on how they're fucking over injured workers and their families. So if WorkSafeBC or Workers' Compensation doesn't comment, they can't print it. Funny how that little fucking vicious circle goes around and around. It's awful. It's really awful how, media can do that. One in one basket, you've got blood and gore and sex and violence, and that sells. Doesn't require any research or reporting or fuck all. It's easy money. And then you've got the injured workers, and that's exactly where we're going to leave that, because reporters and the media don't give a fuck about injured workers at all. But you know what? Injured workers do something drastic, and the media's on it like a bunch of fucking little leeches. Go figure. I love YouTube. YouTube fucking rocks. I'd just like to say thank you again, Sandy, for being a great help, and your mom. You guys fucking rock. Sandy and Lauren's family has been a tremendous help through all of this. We're going to get into some of the things that they've actually had to help us with during this last 3 years, and it's quite a bit too much for extended family to have to do. So thank you very much from the Forbes House.